Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
If you're digging these deep dives into these fascinating topics, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Future deep dives.
Okay, so today
Yeah.
we are taking you on a journey to explore a truly revolutionary concept, seasteading.
It's going to be a good one.
It is going to be a good one.
Yeah.
So,
This is some next level stuff.
it is.
It's not just like living on boats or, building like a fancy houseboat.
Right.
We're talking about creating self-sufficient floating cities,
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries of human ingenuity, and quite possibly redefining what freedom means.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our source material for this deep dive is Seasteading, A Practical Guide to Freedom.
It's a great book.
It is.
It really is.
And it's not some whimsical sci-fi novel.
Yeah.
This book gets down to the nuts and bolts of how to make seasteading a reality,
Yeah.
tackling both the engineering marvels
Okay.
and the very real business challenges involved.
It's a practical guide,
Yes.
as the title suggests.
Yes.
And, the authors really emphasize the need for a grounded approach,
Yeah.
focusing on existing, readily available technologies. Think solar panels and wind turbines for clean energy,
Right.
hydroponics for growing food,
Yeah.
and even clever ways to collect and purify rainwater.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how these everyday technologies can be combined and adapted
Right.
to create a self-sustaining environment in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, and the book is great at debunking some of the myths surrounding seasteading.
Okay.
For example, you might have heard about building with secrete,
Yes.
this magical material that supposedly forms underwater.
Yeah, that always sounded a little too good to be true.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the authors explain why secrete, while promising,
Yeah.
isn't quite ready for prime time.
Okay.
And they also address the idea of using OTEC generators,
Okay.
which harness the temperature difference between warm surface water and cold deep water to generate electricity.
I remember reading about that. It sounded like a game changer.
It does, but the reality is that OTEC technology is still quite expensive and inefficient, especially for the scale needed to power a seastead.
Okay, so no magical secret cities
Right.
or endless free energy from the ocean just yet.
Not yet.
But that doesn't mean there aren't incredibly ingenious solutions out there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The book highlights some truly inspiring examples of human ingenuity.
Okay.
There's a story about a small island built entirely from recycled plastic bottles.
Wait, an entire island made of plastic bottles?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It really is. They used thousands of 2-liter bottles filled with sand and connected them to create a floating foundation.
Wow.
Then they added soil and vegetation, and now it's a thriving little ecosystem.
That's a perfect example of the resourcefulness and innovative thinking that seasteading demands.
I think so.
It's not about relying on some futuristic technology.
No.
It's about using what we have in creative and sustainable ways.
Exactly. Now, while we've touched on the possibility of self-sufficient platforms, there's a crucial question we need to address. The economics of seasteading.
Right.
How do you make a floating city financially viable?
Right, because even if you can grow your own food and generate your own power, you still need to pay for things like materials and maintenance. And let's be honest, the occasional pizza delivery.
Of course.
Right.
And that's where the business side of things comes in.
Yes.
The book delves into various business models, and one that stands out is the concept of a timeshare resort for seasteads.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
You're essentially tapping into the existing tourism market.
You're right.
People might not be ready to pack up and move to a seastead permanently, but a vacation,
Right.
that's a different story.
Precisely. It provides a lower barrier to entry and could generate significant revenue, especially if you offer unique experiences that you can't find anywhere else.
Right.
Imagine diving excursions to explore underwater habitats or tours of sustainable farming and energy systems.
It could be a fantastic way to showcase the possibilities of seasteading to a wider audience, and maybe even get more people on board with the idea of living on the ocean.
Exactly. And that leads us to one of the most compelling aspects of seasteading, dynamic geography.
Oh, okay.
This is where things get truly revolutionary.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What exactly is dynamic geography?
It's the idea that seasteads, unlike land-based societies, aren't bound by fixed borders.
Okay.
They have the freedom to move. Imagine disagreeing with the way your seastead is being run.
Right.
You could simply unmoor and float away to a different one that aligns with your values.
Well, that's a game changer.
It is.
It's like choosing your own government.
Yeah.
No more being stuck with a system you didn't choose.
Exactly. This concept raises some really exciting questions about governmental innovation.
Yeah.
Think about it. We get new car models every year, new smartphones, new technology constantly evolving. But government models,
Right.
they tend to evolve at a snail's pace, stuck in centuries-old traditions.
It's kind of crazy when you put it that way. We're so used to rapid innovation in almost every area of our lives.
Yeah,
But when it comes to governance, it feels like we're stuck in the past.
exactly. And the book uses this great analogy. We choose new cars every year, but we're essentially stuck with the same government models for centuries.
Right.
Dynamic geography could change all that.
Yeah.
It opens up a world of possibilities for experimenting with new forms of governance, new ways of organizing society, and new ways of ensuring individual freedom.
It's like a giant social experiment, a chance to try out different approaches and see what works best.
It is.
So with all this freedom and potential for innovation, why choose the ocean specifically? I mean, couldn't you build floating platforms on lakes or rivers?
You could, but the book makes a compelling case for the ocean as the ideal location, for one. There's a symbolic connection between the fluid nature of water and the inherent flexibility of seasteading.
Okay.
Seasteads, like the ocean, are constantly in motion, adapting, evolving.
Beautiful way to put it. It's like the ocean itself embodies the spirit of freedom and adaptability that seasteading represents.
It does, but there's also a practical reason. Working within existing nations, even on inland waters, presents significant challenges.
Okay.
You're bound by their laws, regulations, and existing power structures.
It's like trying to build something new on top of an old foundation.
Right.
You're always limited by what's already there.
Exactly. Seasteading offers a chance to start fresh, to create something truly innovative and unique, unburdened by the baggage of history and tradition.
So it's not just about escaping to the ocean.
No.
It's about escaping the limitations of existing systems and creating something truly new, speaking of new beginnings.
Yeah.
Let's dive into some historical precedents for building new societies, especially on the ocean.
Okay.
Have there been any successful attempts in the past?
The book provides a fascinating overview of past endeavors to create new communities at sea. Some were surprisingly successful, like pirate radio stations that challenged government control of the airwaves back in the 60s and 70s.
Oh.
They operated from ships and forts in international waters, broadcasting music and messages that were often banned on land.
It's funny to think of pirate radio as a precursor to seasteading,
Yeah.
but it makes sense.
Yeah.
They were essentially creating their own independent media platforms outside of existing regulations.
Exactly. And their success shows that it is possible to operate outside traditional jurisdictions and create thriving communities with their own rules and values.
But I'm sure there have also been failures, right? Projects that didn't quite pan out as planned.
Definitely. And the book doesn't shy away from those stories. It dives into cautionary tales like the Freedom Ship Project, a massive vessel designed to be a self-contained floating city.
I vaguely remember hearing about that. Wasn't it supposed to be like a mile long or something?
It was an incredibly ambitious endeavor. The Freedom Ship was envisioned as a constantly moving city circumnavigating the globe with tens of thousands of residents. But it ultimately failed due to a combination of factors.
What kind of factors?
Well, there were technical challenges, of course. Building a structure that massive and keeping it stable at sea is no small feat.
Right.
And then there were the financial hurdles. The project required billions of dollars in investment, which proved difficult to secure.
I can imagine.
It's a huge undertaking, both technologically and financially, and perhaps most importantly, the project seemed to underestimate the unique demands of life at sea.
Okay.
Creating a sustainable and thriving community on a ship requires more than just building a big enough boat.
Right.
It requires a deep understanding of human psychology, social dynamics, and the delicate balance of the ocean environment.
So the Freedom Ship, while ultimately a failure, provided some valuable lessons about the complexities of seasteading.
Absolutely. And the book emphasizes the importance of learning from both the successes and the failures of past endeavors.
Yeah.
Understanding the challenges that led to past failures and the strategies that led to successes is crucial for informing the future of seasteading.
It's like the old saying, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's more like those who don't learn from past attempts at seasteading are less likely to succeed.
Exactly. We need to study the successes of projects like pirate radio, which cleverly exploited legal loopholes, and we need to understand why ambitious projects like the Freedom Ship floundered.
So history provides a roadmap highlighting both the potential pitfalls and the pathways to success. But I'm curious, even with those historical lessons in mind, can we really escape the complexities of the modern world, even on the open ocean? What about things like laws and regulations?
That's a great question, and it brings us to a critical aspect of any new society. The legal and political landscape, even in international waters, we can't entirely escape the rules and regulations of the existing world. The book dives deep into the complexities of navigating international waters and the UN law of the sea.
Okay, so even if you're in the middle of the ocean, there are still rules you have to follow.
Yeah.
It's not like a free-for-all out there.
Not quite. There's no ocean king ruling over the seas, but there are treaties and agreements that govern how nations interact and what activities are permitted in international waters. One concept that's particularly relevant to seasteading is flags of convenience.
Flags of convenience. That sounds a little shady, like something out of a pirate movie.
It can be a bit complex, but essentially a seastead would need to be flagged to a particular nation. This means registering with a country and agreeing to abide by its laws, at least to some extent.
So even though you're building an independent community on the ocean, you still need some kind of national affiliation. I guess it makes sense from a legal standpoint, but it seems like it could create some potential conflicts.
You're absolutely right. Governments aren't exactly known for giving up power easily, and they might see independent seasteads as a threat, especially if those seasteads start attracting citizens and businesses away from traditional jurisdictions.
And then there's the whole issue of enforcement. How do you ensure that seasteads actually comply with the laws of the country they're flagged to, especially if they're located far out at sea?
Exactly, and that's where the potential for conflict arises. The book provides some sobering examples of government interference, particularly in the context of the war on drugs. Even in international waters, ships and platforms suspected of drug trafficking or other illegal activities have been boarded and seized by authorities.
That's a harsh reality check, it seems like. No matter how far out to sea you go, you can't entirely escape the reach of existing governments.
That's true, but it's important to remember that the book doesn't advocate for an all-or-nothing approach. The authors stress the importance of realism and compromise.
Okay.
They argue that focusing on incremental progress, making a few key changes at a time, is more likely to succeed than striving for some unattainable utopia.
So it's about taking baby steps towards freedom, finding those areas where we can push the boundaries and experiment with new ways of living and governing without necessarily throwing out the entire rule book.
Exactly. It's about identifying those aspects of traditional systems that are no longer serving us well and exploring alternative approaches even within the constraints of the existing legal and political framework. And the authors believe that even with those constraints, significant improvements can be made to how we organize our societies and ensure individual liberties.
That's actually quite optimistic.
Yeah.
It's not about creating a perfect world overnight, but rather about continuously striving for a better one,
Right.
even if it means working within the system to some extent.
And that's a crucial point. The book, while acknowledging the challenges, is ultimately a call to action.
Yeah.
It's a blueprint for those who are ready to dare to innovate, to create a future where freedom flourishes, even if it starts with small steps.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. The engineering feats, the economic considerations, the legal hurdles, and the potential for conflict. We've seen both the inspiring examples of human ingenuity and the cautionary tales of past failures. But one thing's for sure. The sheer audacity of this whole concept, this vision of creating self-governing communities on the open ocean, is mind-blowing.
It certainly challenges our assumptions about how society can and should function. It asks us to reconsider what freedom truly means and to explore new possibilities for human organization and governance.
So the big question remains, is seasteading a viable path to freedom?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that we'll continue to explore as we dive deeper into the book in our next segment.
Stay tuned, everyone, because we're just getting started.
Welcome back to our deep dive into this fascinating world of seasteading.
Yeah.
You know, in the last segment, we talked about the importance of learning from history.
It's true. Those past attempts at creating new societies at sea, both the successes and the failures, offer invaluable insights for anyone serious about making seasteading a reality.
I mean, who knew pirate radio stations could be so relevant to building floating cities?
Right. They were pioneers in a way,
Yeah.
finding ways to operate outside of traditional jurisdictions. But like we discussed, there were also cautionary tales, like the Freedom Ship Project,
Right.
this massive vessel that was envisioned as a self-contained floating city.
Yeah. The Freedom Ship, it's fascinating how such a grand vision, a city at sea circumnavigating the globe,
Yeah.
could ultimately flounder. What were the main factors that led to its downfall?
Well, the book highlights a few key issues.
Okay.
First, the sheer scale of the project presented immense technical challenges.
Right.
Building a stable structure that massive capable of withstanding the forces of the ocean
Yeah.
is a monumental task.
I can only imagine the engineering hurdles involved.
Exactly. And then, of course, there are the financial hurdles.
Right.
The Freedom Ship required billions of dollars in investment, and attracting that kind of capital proved to be a major obstacle. That makes sense. Investors are always looking for a return, and with a project that ambitious, the risks must have seemed astronomical.
Absolutely. And beyond the technical and financial aspects, the projects seem to underestimate the unique challenges of creating a thriving community at sea.
Yeah.
Life on a floating city is unlike anything we've experienced before.
Right.
And understanding the social dynamics, the psychological impact of living in a confined environment, and the need for sustainable practices is crucial.
It's like the difference between designing a building and creating a vibrant neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
You need to consider not just the physical structure, but the human element,
Yeah.
the social fabric that holds it all together.
Precisely. And the Freedom Ship, while ultimately a failure, serves as a stark reminder that seasteading isn't just about building bigger boats.
Right.
It's about creating sustainable communities that address both the practical and the human aspects of living on the ocean.
So learning from those past mistakes, how do we ensure that future seasteading projects are more likely to succeed? How do we bridge that gap between the romantic vision and the harsh realities?
Well, the book stresses the importance of taking an incremental approach.
Okay.
Instead of trying to build a utopia overnight,
Yeah.
focus on smaller, more achievable goals. Start with pilot projects.
Right.
Test out different designs and technologies and gather data on what works and what doesn't.
So it's about taking a more measured approach, learning as we go, and gradually building towards those grander visions.
Exactly. And that brings us back to one of the most exciting aspects of seasteading that we touched on earlier. Its potential to drive governmental innovation.
Right. Dynamic geography.
Yeah.
That idea that seasteads, unconstrained by fixed borders, could become laboratories for new forms of governance is mind-blowing.
It really is. Imagine a world where you could choose your government as easily as you choose your internet provider.
Wow.
If you're unhappy with the policies or the leadership of your seastead, you could simply unmoor and move to a different one that aligns better with your values.
That's the ultimate form of freedom of choice.
It is.
No more being stuck with a system that doesn't represent your interests.
Exactly. And this freedom of movement could lead to an explosion of experimentation in how we govern ourselves.
Yeah.
We could see seasteads based on different philosophies, different economic models,
Right.
different social structures.
It would be like a giant social experiment,
Yeah.
a global marketplace of governance where people could vote with their feet, choosing the system that best suits their needs and beliefs.
Precisely. And this competition between different models could drive innovation and improvement at a pace we've never seen before.
Wow.
It's like the difference between a stagnant monopoly and a dynamic free market.
It's a powerful idea, but I can also see how some people might be hesitant.
Sure.
Wouldn't this level of freedom and experimentation lead to chaos and instability?
That's a valid concern, and the book acknowledges that seasteading, while offering immense potential, doesn't magically erase human nature. There will still be disagreements, competing interests, and the potential for abuse of power.
So how do we mitigate those risks? How do we ensure that seasteads, with all their freedom and potential for experimentation, don't devolve into anarchy?
Well, the book suggests several safeguards, including strong legal frameworks, transparent governance structures,
Yeah.
and a commitment to peaceful conflict resolution.
So even though you're creating new societies, you still need rules and regulations to ensure order and stability. It's about finding that balance between freedom and responsibility.
Exactly. And the book also stresses the importance of diversity, having a variety of seasteads with different governing philosophies and approaches.
Right.
This would create a kind of checks and balances system, preventing any one ideology from dominating.
It's like having a diverse ecosystem.
Yeah.
Different species, different ways of life, all coexisting and contributing to the overall health and resilience of the system.
Exactly. And this diversity would also provide individuals with more choices, allowing them to select the community that best aligns with their values and beliefs.
So instead of trying to create one perfect system,
Right.
it's about fostering a vibrant and diverse network of seasteads,
Yeah.
each experimenting and innovating in its own way.
Precisely now, while the potential for societal innovation is thrilling,
Yeah.
Let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the practical aspects of actually designing and building a floating city.
Okay.
What kind of structures are we talking about?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. What does a seastead actually look like?
Right.
Are we talking about giant cruise ships or something completely different?
Well, the book dives into a fascinating array of structure designs, from underwater habitats to towering platforms that rise high above the waves.
Wow.
One design that stands out is the spar platform.
Spar platform. That sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Imagine a tall, slender structure that extends deep below the water's surface, providing stability even in rough seas. At the top of this spar, high above the waves, is a platform where the living and working spaces are located.
Wow, that sounds incredible being up that high. You'd have amazing views of the ocean.
Absolutely, and the spar design offers several advantages. First, it minimizes the impact of waves and storms as the majority of the structure is submerged.
That makes sense. It's like an iceberg with most of its mass below the surface, making it incredibly stable.
Exactly. And second, because the platform is elevated, it's less susceptible to flooding and rising sea levels.
So it's both stable and resilient to the changing ocean environment.
Yes.
But I imagine building something like that must be incredibly complex.
It certainly is. The book delves into the engineering challenges, from material selection to stability calculations to the unique demands of construction at sea.
Yeah.
It's a mind-boggling feat of engineering,
Yeah.
requiring expertise in multiple disciplines.
It makes you appreciate the ingenuity and collaboration required to make these visions a reality.
Absolutely. And that's just the structure itself.
Right.
We also need to consider the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Power generation, water desalination, waste management, food production.
Waste management. What do you do with garbage on a floating city?
Right.
You just toss it overboard.
Definitely not. The book emphasizes the importance of sustainability and minimizing the impact on the ocean environment.
Okay.
It discusses various options for waste management,
Yeah.
including recycling, composting, and even advanced treatment systems that can convert waste into energy.
That's reassuring. It wouldn't be very freedom-loving to pollute the very ocean that provides you with a home.
Exactly. Seasteading is about finding freedom, but it's also about responsibility. Responsibility to the planet and to future generations.
So it's not just about escaping to a pristine paradise.
No.
It's about creating a sustainable way of life that respects the delicate balance of the ocean ecosystem. But with all this talk of engineering and infrastructure, it all sounds incredibly expensive.
Sure.
Is seasteading only for the super rich?
That's a common misconception, and the book addresses it head on. While those large-scale, futuristic spar platforms certainly require significant capital,
Right.
there are also more incremental approaches that could be more accessible.
So what would a more realistic near-term seastead look like?
Right.
Something that wouldn't require billions of dollars in investment.
Well, the book explores some intriguing possibilities,
Okay.
including retrofitted cruise ships, modified oil platforms,
Okay.
and even clusters of smaller interconnected platforms.
So think smaller, more modular,
Yeah.
and more focused on specific communities or industries.
Exactly. You could have a seastead dedicated to aquaculture, another focused on research and development,
Right.
and another designed as a sustainable ecotourism destination.
So instead of one giant city, you have a network of specialized communities, each contributing to the overall ecosystem of seasteading.
Precisely. And as technology advances and costs decrease, the possibilities for affordable and sustainable seasteading will continue to expand.
That's encouraging. It means that seasteading isn't just a pipe dream for the elite. It has the potential to become a viable option for a much broader range of people.
Mm-hmm.
Those seeking new opportunities, new ways of life, and a chance to shape their own destinies.
And that, I think, is the most exciting aspect of this whole movement.
Yeah.
Seasteading offers a glimpse of a future where freedom and innovation are not just abstract ideals, but tangible realities within reach.
It's a future worth fighting for, a future where the vastness of the ocean becomes a canvas for human ingenuity and a catalyst for societal evolution. And it's a future that, as we'll explore in our next segment, might be closer than we think. Welcome back to The Deep Dive. We've been exploring this incredible world of seasteading, from the engineering marvels to the potential for governmental innovation, but now I want to get into some of the more unconventional, even philosophical aspects of this movement. What are some of the core principles that guide the seasteading philosophy?
Well, the book emphasizes the concept of openness as a foundational principle.
Okay.
This means being transparent about your goals, your methods, and even your existence. It's about embracing a radical form of transparency, both internally within the seasteading community and externally with the rest of the world.
That's interesting because it seems counterintuitive. You'd
Yeah.
think that when you're trying to build something new and potentially disruptive,
Right.
you'd want to keep things under wraps, to
Yeah.
operate in secrecy, to avoid interference.
You'd think so, right? But the authors argue that this kind of openness has several advantages.
Okay.
First, it builds trust by being upfront about your intentions.
Yeah.
You attract like-minded individuals and create a sense of shared purpose.
So it's not about hiding in the shadows. It's about being a beacon, drawing people in with a shared vision.
Exactly. Second, it disarms potential opposition.
Okay.
By being transparent, you're less likely to be seen as a threat.
Right.
And third, it fosters a culture of collaboration and knowledge sharing.
It creates an environment where people feel comfortable sharing ideas, working together, and contributing to the collective good, like the open source movement in software development, where sharing code leads to faster innovation and better products.
Exactly. And that brings us to another fascinating concept discussed in the book. The idea of an open source world library for seasteading.
Okay, now that sounds really cool. Tell me more about this open source library. What would it contain?
Imagine a vast digital repository of knowledge specifically curated for seasteaders.
Okay.
It would include blueprints for different seastead designs,
Okay.
technical specifications for various systems, legal frameworks for governing a seastead,
Wow.
best practices for sustainable living, and even cultural artifacts that reflect the values and aspirations of the seasteading community.
It's like a blueprint for building a new society freely available to anyone who wants to contribute.
Yeah.
It's an incredible idea, democratizing access to information and empowering individuals to participate in the movement.
Exactly. It's about removing the barriers to entry and fostering a truly global community of seasteaders who can learn from each other, share best practices, and collaborate on solutions to common challenges. Imagine someone in a landlocked country could contribute to the design of a sustainable energy system for a seastead halfway across the world.
It's a beautiful vision of collaboration and shared knowledge, transcending borders and traditional limitations.
Yeah,
It's really inspiring. But let's get back to some of the practicalities.
sure.
We've talked about the ideals, the vision,
Uh-huh.
but how do you actually make money on a seastead? Aside from the timeshare resort idea,
Yeah.
what other business opportunities are there?
The book explores a wide range of possibilities, many of which leverage the unique resources and advantages of the ocean environment.
Okay.
For example, aquaculture and mariculture could be major industries.
Aquaculture and mariculture, so basically farming the ocean.
Exactly. Seasteads could become hubs for sustainable seafood production,
Okay.
providing food security for their residents and generating revenue through exports. Imagine fresh, sustainably raised seafood shipped directly from a floating farm to your table.
That sounds amazing, and it's a much more environmentally friendly approach than traditional fishing methods
Right.
that often deplete fish populations and damage marine ecosystems.
Exactly. And there's the potential for offshore data centers,
Okay.
which could take advantage of the ocean's natural cooling properties to reduce energy consumption.
That makes sense. Servers generate a lot of heat, and using seawater to cool them would be much more efficient and sustainable than traditional air conditioning systems.
Precisely. And being located outside of traditional jurisdictions could be attractive to companies looking for data privacy and security.
So you've got your sustainable seafood, your energy-efficient data centers.
Mm.
What other innovative business ideas are floating around out there?
Well, there's the potential for specialized manufacturing that leverages the unique properties of the ocean. For example, you could have facilities that extract minerals from seawater
Right.
or produce biofuels from algae.
It's incredible to think about all the possibilities. Seasteading is like a blank slate, a chance to reimagine not just how we live, but also how we work and create value in a way that's both profitable and sustainable.
Exactly. And that entrepreneurial spirit, that willingness to think outside the box, is essential for the success of the seasteading movement.
It's about seeing the ocean not just as a vast expanse of water, but as a source of opportunity, a frontier for innovation and human ingenuity.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic.
Right.
We've talked about all the potential benefits, but what about the challenges and risks?
Of course, the book doesn't shy away from those. It acknowledges the potential for conflict with existing nations, the complexities of navigating international law, the environmental challenges of operating in a sensitive ecosystem, and the ever-present threat of natural disasters.
Yeah, the ocean can be a powerful and unpredictable force.
Yeah.
Hurricanes, typhoons, road waves, you can't control those things.
And that's where adaptability and resilience come in.
Yeah.
Seasteaders need to be prepared for the unexpected, both in terms of natural events and potential human conflict. They need to design resilient structures, implement robust safety protocols, and foster a culture of preparedness.
So it's not for the faint of heart.
No?
It's about embracing the unknown, taking calculated risks, and being prepared to face whatever challenges come your way.
Exactly, but for those who are drawn to the promise of freedom,
Yeah.
for those who are willing to push the boundaries of human ingenuity and create a new world, seasteading offers an unparalleled opportunity.
It's a chance to shape a new future, to build societies based on principles of liberty, innovation, and sustainability. It's a chance to create a world that reflects our values and aspirations, a world where we're no longer limited by the constraints of existing systems.
And as we've seen, it's not just a futuristic fantasy. It's a movement that's gaining momentum, attracting brilliant minds and bold entrepreneurs who are ready to make this vision a reality.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they consider this idea of seasteading?
Seasteading is a complex and multifaceted movement full of promise and peril. It challenges our assumptions about how we live, how we govern ourselves, and how we interact with the planet. It's not a solution for everyone,
Right.
but it's a fascinating and potentially world-changing endeavor that deserves our attention.
It's a call to action for those who are ready to think differently, to challenge the status quo, and to imagine new possibilities for human civilization.
Yeah,
It's a reminder that the future is not predetermined.
right.
We have the power to shape it, to create new possibilities, to build a world where freedom, innovation, and sustainability flourish.
And perhaps most importantly, it's a reminder that the ocean is not just a vast expanse of water separating continents.
Yeah.
It's a source of opportunity, a frontier for exploration, and a canvas for human ingenuity.
Well said. And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep daring to dream of a better future.
Because as the seasteading movement demonstrates, the only limits to human ingenuity are the ones we impose upon ourselves.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey, everyone. And until next time, keep diving deep,